So last week we did an episode on rice pudding, a fancy or a rich rice pudding. Today we'll be doing what Amelia Simmons calls the cheap one, or a cheap one, an inexpensive rice pudding. Thanks for joining us today. So again, these recipes are out of Amelia Simmons's American Cookery Cookbook. A very, very important cookbook for the 18th century. This is sort of the Rosetta Stone that gives us the idea of what's happening in North American cookery. So we have all these English cookbooks, but this is the first American cookbook. And you can see it's not very big. She is right to the point with these recipes. And the rice pudding one here, number 5, is a great example of that. It's very, very short, very simple. Although one of the funny things is one of the ingredients is actually missing in number 5. And you have to find it on the back. On the back of this cookbook is the Etera, where they have the corrections, and it says, oh yeah, we forgot an ingredient in number 5. So let's look at the ingredients that we've got here. She says, a cheap one, a half a pint of rice, 2 quarts of milk, salt, butter, allspice, put it cold into the hot oven, bake it an hour and a half. That's all there is to the recipe. So what have we got here? I've got some rice. Now I again cut this recipe in half because I don't need a giant mountain of rice pudding. So we've got our 4 ounces of rice. And I'm just gonna start mixing these up into our main bowl here. It also calls for milk, and let's see, it says, all there is for liquid in here is the milk. It says 2 quarts of milk. So I'm gonna have this. I've got 1 quart of just regular old milk here. And a few of these do have something as, rich as cream, some of these recipes, but this one, again, just plain milk. Let's see, salt, just regular salt here. Butter, again, no amount of butter here. And so, I guess she's letting this up to the cook. If you want to make it a very inexpensive version, you put in a very small quantity of butter. And of course, this isn't heated, this is cold. And what are we going to do with this butter? How are we going to get it into this mix? Well, I'll give you a hint about that later on. But for right now, I'm just going to cut up a couple little pieces of butter here, and I'm just going to toss them right in. Next up, we have the spice part of this recipe, and all it is allspice. And we can tell that this is the cheap version because allspice is the only spice that we have in here. We don't have expensive cinnamon. We certainly don't have expensive nutmeg or mace, which is even more expensive. So I've just got some ground allspice here. Sometimes in these recipe books, it was called Jamaica pepper. Again, that's our choice as to exactly how expensive it's gonna be is how much we put in. And now the formal recipe, that's the end of it. But of course, we have to flip onto the back. It says, let's see, rice pudding number 5. After half pint of rice, add 6 ounces of sugar. Well, so we have to add sugar to this recipe also. And I've got 3 ounces of sugar because I'm making half of this, and I'm just using granulated sugar. They may have used something else. They may have even used something like maple sugar in this recipe. Okay, we're all mixed up, at least as mixed up as this is going to get. I've got my baking dish here. I'm using one of our tin bowls. These hold just about a quart. I might not be able to get all of it in here. That's all right if I don't. I'll just not put everything in because this is going to grow, and if we bring it right up to the top, it will overflow, and we don't want that to happen. We don't want it to boil over in the oven, so don't fill your vessel all the way to the top. So that's our mix. It filled our bowl quite well. You can tell that our butter's just gonna sit there floating. Now, not in this recipe or even in any of the ones in Amelia Simmons, but in some of the other 18th century recipes, they talk about something very similar, and they actually say that partway through the cooking process, when it's baking in the oven, you want to go in there and you want to stir it. And that's something that I probably will do with this one. After it starts to warm up and that butter melts, I'll probably give it a stir or 2 in the oven and then just let it cook the rest of the way. So this is ready to go in the oven. As she says, put it cold into the hot oven, and she says bake it 2.5 hours. This is a half size one, so probably won't have to bake it all that long, but you know, maybe 1.5 hours, maybe 1 hour 45 minutes, depending on just how cooked you want it to look when it's done. Let's get this one in the oven. So our pudding came out of the oven and we let it cool all the way, and I've got a serving here that I pulled out of that dish. And hey, it looks really interesting in the bowl. Of course, you know, it kind of, you know, bubbles over, and of course it's not the prettiest looking thing in the world. But here it is, and hey, it looks good. This is totally cooled off. So let's give it a taste and see exactly how this particular rice pudding turned out. Oh yeah. Excellent sweet flavors. Very, very tasty. I would definitely put it on par with the fancy version. Really, this one is something that anyone could do in their own home. Very inexpensive ingredients, very simple to cook. I mean, you just kind of toss these things in there and bake it, and it's done. The only real problem here is that it has such a longish baking time, that 1.5 hours or so, but turned out extraordinarily well. So highly recommended, even though this is the cheap version. It is very similar to what you'll find in a lot of modern cookbooks today. Wonderful recipe, so simple. This one is, again, right out of Amelia Simmons's little American Cookery Cookbook. This really gives us the idea about what cooking in North America was really like, how they were adapting their modern, or what was available in North America at the time versus what was in England. And you also find in this particular cookbook sort of influences from other cultures, especially German cooking. So this is such a great cookbook. It is available on our website. There'll be a link down in the description section if you're interested. Wow, this has been a lot of fun. I really wanted to do all 6 recipes, but that would be way too much rice pudding. So we had so much fun. I want to thank you for all the support you give us, watching our videos, commenting. This is so much fun. And I want to thank you for coming along with us as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century.